Welcome to Boulder City City Council, special City Council meeting upon which we will hear about and talk about Boulder City's Strategic Plan 2025 through 2030. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you. The agenda was posted in accordance with Nevada open meeting law, and all members are present.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment on anything related to the agenda of the strategic plan as agendized. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Paulson. I'm a member of Boulder City United Methodist Church and Nevadans for the Common Good. But this afternoon, I'm speaking here just for myself as a resident of Boulder City. I've followed this strategic planning process since the beginning. I participated in the community events, and as you know, I have been coming to all these meetings to learn how it's proceeding. And I have participated in strategic planning back in the days when I had paid employment. So I've been through this before in various capacities. I support the goals and both the overview statements and identified strategies that have been developed at this point for each of those goals. But I do have some concern about the wording for some of the action steps, that they are passive or reactive rather than proactive. The words "if needed" and "consider" aren't really action words. They don't really convey action. And if an action step doesn't convey action, it is difficult to measure the outcome to see if you've achieved what you wanted to achieve. And of course, the purpose of a strategic plan is to decide on where the city wants to move over the next 5 years, things that the city wants to do. And for your own purposes and for stakeholders and other people involved, you want to be able to show that you have achieved the things that you've set out to do. So I think this section in the draft relating to what are the action steps and how they relate to the measurements needs to be looked at more carefully or have further review to be sure that those action steps really are steps in a way that then you can measure. Did I do this? Did I achieve this? And also look more carefully how they fit together. The one example I noticed was one of the action steps was looking at business licenses and the process for getting them, I assume, to make it easier for people to get business license. And one of the measurable metrics was an increasing number of new businesses or expanded businesses. Well, licensure can relate to that, but there's a lot of other factors that are going to determine whether a new business comes to town or whether an existing business expands. If you only were looking at the business license process, you're not going to get a very good match between those two. So, and there are some other areas where I have some specific examples, but that I can go into if you want, or just generally if you look at those sections very carefully, particularly where you use the word "if needed." Particularly in one case, it's used as one of your metrics. Well, your metric should be something you automatically do based on what you've said you were going to do. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anyone else here want to participate in public comment? Or anyone can call in at 702-589-9629. 702-589-9629. Any written public comments, Madam City Clerk?
All written public comments would have been forwarded to the City Council prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And anyone here want to come forward in public comment, or anyone on the phone line? 702-589-9629. 702-589-9629. Seeing none, we will begin number 1 on our agenda of matters pertaining to Boulder City 2025-2030 strategic plan. Mr. Mays.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hardy and members of City Council. This is the next step in the adoption of the strategic plan process. You have before you the draft plan as well as the draft implementation plan based on the feedback provided by the council at the last meeting where this was discussed. Robin Stiles with Emergent Method is here to go through the plans with you and answer questions. We have also put in the packet the comments that we received by council members, and she can address those with you as well.
Go ahead, Ms. Stiles.
Thank you to the council and the staff for being here today and allowing us to provide and have this conversation. As you know, you have been actively involved in the creation of this strategic plan. As Michael Mays just mentioned, this is really the culmination of our work that has been going on since January. This is intended to be an opportunity for you to provide additional guidance to assist as we work to finalize and move forward with this strategic plan as well as the implementation plan. Just as a reminder, based on your feedback from earlier this year, we intentionally created both the strategic plan and the implementation plan using the same structure and also the same granularity that was found in the previous iteration of the strategic plan. This was by clear guidance from you, having found that the previous plan was an effective tool as you guided the work of the city. I also want to share that as we move forward, just as has happened in the past, there will be regular updates on the progress of the strategic plan as we move into implementation phase. But today, my hope is to walk through a few areas where the provided feedback from the council perhaps welcomes a bit more discussion, both from individuals wanting to provide a little bit more color to their comments, as well as discussion from the council at large. I understand that both of the rounds of submitted comments were also included in the packet, but I have much of that feedback was helpful and is largely related to wordsmithing. We will sort of put those to the side for the sake of time, but there are certain recommended edits that I think bear a little bit more guidance from the council, and so we can discuss those moving forward. Before I start, are there any perhaps comments or overall guidance beyond what was provided in written form that anybody on the council would like to provide?
Go ahead.
I think when I look at this, and I'm just going to liken it for better reason to my life experience. My daughter Aubrey has Down syndrome. We did IEPs every year, individualized education plans that dictated like how her education would move forward for the following year. When we sat down to do those plans, it was person specific, like this would be city specific, but not implementer specific, meaning that if her teacher left the next year, that new teacher could come in and still do that plan because everything was in it in such a way that it could be implemented by anyone who came in, new or not new, because of the information that was in it. And I guess my comment would be, I do see some vagueness in some of this, and you talked about wordsmithing, which I appreciate. I do recognize all of us in this room have vested interest. We could be here or not be here in 4 years before this plan is up, right? And I want to make sure whoever's new, we've had a bunch of people who have retired, that are over our different areas in our city staff. So whoever comes in and sees this plan, I want it to have, as was mentioned by Barbara, that it has measurable goals and matrices that say, this is what I'm going to do when I come in. and that it's easy and transferable to a new person even coming in. So that would be my comments.
Thank you. Other comments? I'm going to ask a question. So we have this strategic implementation plan that's under attachment number 2. I think that's where it is. And I looked at that and I thought, okay, so where are we with our input when we turn each page on number 1 through 6 and goal 2, 1 through 6 and goal 3, etc. Do you want to go through those and hear what we think, or how do you want to have us let you know our questions, our concerns vis-a-vis the individual things?
So I propose that we go through each of the goals. I have pulled in areas where there is sort of additional feedback that was provided in written form by council members in advance of this meeting that I would just like to present to make sure that there is agreement on the part of the entire council regarding some things that weren't previously discussed and agreed upon. And at that time, as we're going through the goals, if there is additional feedback that you'd like to offer, I think we can go through that versus going through every single strategy very iteratively. I think at the goal level, and then if there is additional feedback there, that would maybe be the most expedient and efficient way.
So we'll hear from what, I think it was 2 council people.
2 council people, setting aside anything that was a specific modification of a particular word, anything that requires further discussion.
And then we'll go through each goal after that.
Yes, so I'll present, so for instance, the goal, there were 2 comments that I think bear further discussion. I'll present those. I'll allow council to provide additional feedback, have discussion as a group, and then if there are additional feedback on or points on anything related to goal 1, we can go through that, and then we'll move to goal 2. I'll go through and review any of the pull-out comments, and then we can have that broader discussion.
All right? Go for it.
Great. So goal 1 was maintaining high-quality recreation and tourism offerings for residents and visitors. The 2 areas that I'd like to pose for broader discussion from this group are related. The first one is related to a comment about adding a specific activity to build a splash pad at Del Prado Park and Library. That was not something that had been specifically discussed by this group, and so my desire is to just better understand the council's desire and whether that should be explicitly added into the strategy or whether that is already sort of wrapped up as in consideration of additional projects that might be brought forward in the next 5 years.
Mayor Hardy, I presented that.
Go for it.
I noticed there wasn't a lot for children in this strategic plan. So I decided to go look at the splash pad, and I went by several times a day out around the splash pad, and it's packed. The families are out there all day long. And so by putting one at Del Prado, people could walk to that one. Putting one at the library, again, that's another walking area, so that it would give the opportunity for better recreation for children, especially in our hot summers here. And so that's why I presented that. I felt we needed a splash pad. I also felt that when they do a survey, they should get some kids from the high school and from junior high, especially Parks and Rec, to see where the children are going with their thoughts and ideas, what they really want for their community, because to have a whole community, you need to have kids involved also. So that was why I brought that up.
Yep. Your latter comment has already been added as a tracked change in terms of the survey. Given the financial investment in the splash pad, that's the only reason why I present that sort of to the broader council for discussion on whether you'd like that included.
Was there an extra copy that have your edits on it?
No, the comments were provided immediately before or after the deadline for submission of the packets. So no,
Okay.
I'm working.
We don't
on-
have access to...
No, you have the comments, but I'm pulling out only those things that require additional discussion because of either a budgetary implication or because there is a contradiction in the things that were offered.
Okay, I have a question regarding this, and maybe staff, maybe you. So if we look at Park and Rec, there's a number of different things that they do. You know, I know they've just replaced the park amenities in a lot of the parks. I know that they have an upcoming outdoor pickleball courts that will be being built. We have the pool that we are hoping to be built. I mean, the pool is its own little goal, which it should be. I don't see pickleball on here anywhere. So I'm just asking, are our future capital improvement projects that are slated for that specific area included in here, or just assumed as included items?
I think with this strategic plan, this is the city council inputting all of the public feedback and coming up with a document that's at really the 30,000-foot level. And so when you have strategies that talk about, for example, expanding recreational opportunities for children, that goal can then manifest itself in the council's annual review of the CIP and the budget to help with implementation. So do you want to put in this strategic plan, you know, we would like to add 2 more pickleball courts? I would say that's not appropriate for this plan. But if it talks about adding more recreational amenities, then this is a document that both the council and staff will reference annually as you're beginning the budget process. And this is the opportunity to propose those types of improvements that accomplish these goals.
So you could put something in there that might say, an action step, prioritize new amenities that our constituents have expressed concerns about wanting, or something, you know, to that effect. So you could put that in so it's an action item, and we make sure that we understand what their concerns are and what they want over time, and then we assess them. I just know that we have projects coming up, right? And that would be kind of a capital improvement project if we put water park, which hey, listen, I think would be great. I just don't know. I'm asking, because then if we get into the weeds like that, then I think we're building pickleball courts. They're on the capital improvement. They're slated for that. Does that have to be there then? Are we getting that specific? Or can we just say that maybe we do want new amenities, and we'll assess what we need, what our needs, a needs-based assessment on new amenities in parks or for Park and Rec?
I would offer that that's possibly included in the action steps that include conducting a community outreach survey to identify programmatic needs and preferences, and then also developing and piloting new programs and offerings. That's related to this recreational offerings with a specific focus on youth. So that's under Goal 1, Strategy 2.
Okay, and then action item, once we do that?
Prioritize development of new amenities based on feedback.
Okay.
Great. Further comment on that?
Yeah, I'm lost. I'm working off of this document.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say strategy 2,
Under Goal 1. So
Under-
the
under
strategy
goal
is
1,
expanding affordable, accessible, and diverse recreational offerings.
okay.
That one. And so based on the feedback from Councilperson Booth, I'm including youth in the survey outreach based on her comments around inclusion for that first bullet. And then I'm adding a third bullet under action items that will include prioritize the development of new amenities based on that feedback.
You're adding that strategy as number 7 then?
No, as an action step.
So it'll be like under action steps.
Okay.
Just adding more bullets.
So, I love bullets if they're numbered.
Oh, we can certainly number
I
them.
mean, I don't know, where you're at sometimes when you just have bullets. I like bullets, but if they're not numbered, and you referred to, I'm adding something, what number is it?
So, yes.
And so I understand now, what you're talking about. I think it's going to be a discussion that we go through every one of the goals and each one of the strategies and see where it is. So I hear the public say we want something measurable. I'm not sure that everything in the grand scheme of the strategic plan is as measurable as it is the intention to do something, as opposed to on day 5, we're going to do this, on day 274, we're going to do that. I think the concept that it's a 5-year plan, as it were, or a 6-year plan, what we're doing on the 1-year look at what we're going to do next, how does it fit in the strategy, I feel comfortable with that, as opposed to coming back with saying, okay, a measurable goal will be in November, we'll have a splash pad. But I appreciate what the city manager's saying, that we have to review what we can afford, as it were, and then put that into the budget of how we're going to do. And that's going to be we're not going to be able to pretend we know the budget for 5 years from now. At least, I don't think we can, but it would be nice. So I think I'm okay now. So what I'm waiting for is goal number 1, and go down each one of the strategies and see if we like it. Is that what you're talking about?
We certainly can.
And I'm asking a naive question, I guess, and I'll ask that of my council, how they want. I just look at something organized instead of waiting for, an open-ended thing. How are we going to do strategy? Do we have something else in strategy 1? Do we have something else in strategy 2? Where are we at, so that we have some kind of structure today as to how we're going to do it? And that's kind of how I look at this, is one by one, how does it fit into our strategic plan? And is it okay? So I think the splash pad, for instance, wow, who wouldn't like a splash pad for the kids in the summer? Where does that fit in a strategy, or in a completion, or measurable, or whatever? I think what the city manager is implying, we have an intention to do something, and to say it's going to be in the park or the library or both probably is beyond our strategic plan as much as our intention. And intentions aren't as measurable as some may like it. But every year we have to review the strategic plan and then say, how does it fit in today? And at the end of 5 years, theoretically, we've done something, but technically speaking, every year we look back and say, how are we doing on our strategic plan? Is that accurate?
Yes, absolutely. Retrospectively on the last year, and then also through the existing processes related to budget and the report outs on the strategic plan, looking forward at what can be accomplished.
And I'll just throw that open to the council. How do you folks think you want to make use of this time today?
If I could make a comment observation as well. If we look at the implementation plan, I'll just use goal 1 as the example. We have the strategy on the far left, the action steps, lead department, etc., right? And so we're talking overall about goals, strategies, and metrics, or matrices, right? So a question for clarification through this conversation maybe might help lead to some answers of the mayor's comment and question. Are the action steps intended to be what would be the metrics for that strategy, or a general summary, and the matrices will be created later by staff after looking at the strategies and what metrics best to create there? So I think we need to figure that out as well, because if we look at the action steps, they're not a good list of getting down into it, as we've talked about, and I don't know that we want to get there, but anyway, I'll then bounce it back to you to answer that and comment on it.
Yeah, I would offer that, again, action steps are meant to be sort of these sub paths that you get to implementing the overall strategy. And so you provided feedback on the initial strategy previously, and then the action steps are the how in many ways. Given that this is a 5-year plan, it is not a best practice to include an iterative step for what you should expect every quarter or every single year in that. Oftentimes, some cities and municipalities use an annual plan where they take the overall strategic plan, which is guiding feedback over a multi-year period, and then they break it down based on their budget constraints, and then also their staffing and the desires of their community. Again, that's how some communities function. That is not a practice here, which is perfectly fine, but these action steps are meant to be the how and how this might be implemented over a 5-year period, which is why there isn't necessarily the granularity of quarterly or yearly or an expectation of what might be seen, at the 3-year mark or the 5-year mark. The success factors and metrics are related to the strategies on how you can measure progress over the years.
So then, what is missing here is how staff is going to report back to us and at what intervals, right? Which we probably ought to add to this.
Yes, so just like with the last strategic plan, staff's intent is to quarterly report out the progress on this implementation plan. Not only will we have the opportunity through the annual budget and the CIP, but through that quarterly presentation to the council, it lets the council know where we have had successes, and if we haven't had successes, why. And it's going to refer directly to the columns that talk about the matrix and success factors and the completion time frame. Going back to Councilwoman Jorgensen's comment about we need staff, maybe new city manager that comes in, being able to look at this document and know exactly what their marching orders are. And so through the way this is set up, just like the last strategic plan, it's very clear through the action steps what the responsibility is and which department is the lead responsibility to make it happen. But we have with the time frame, the short term, medium term, and long term, breaking it out into 3 segments. The short term is this year and next fiscal year. Medium term is the next 2 fiscal years, and the long term is the final 2 fiscal years. So that you can see which will be the priorities based on time frame completion. And it's going to be that quarterly conversation between the city manager and the council as to how successful is staff in implementing the strategic plan.
If I may, 2 comments. If it's the intent, we ought to have it written so the new city manager knows how frequently he's going to be expected to report on this, right? And then I don't think it is as clear to every reader what all the steps are leading us to. I think there's some clarifications that we need to make here. And I'll give an example of that. In Goal 1, Strategy 2, if we go over to Success Factor and Metrics, the second bullet point underneath, so you have two bullet points. One is positive user feedback. I'm not aware of a systematic process to receive user feedback from our Parks and Rec customers, nor have I ever seen a summary of user feedback from our Parks and Rec customers. So if that exists, I've never seen it, and if it doesn't exist, a step somewhere needs to be create that so that we can get the feedback from the customers. And that's an example that not everything is entirely clear in here. And there's a fair amount of clarifications as we go. So we can either clarify that one here or just leave it on the table as notes to create something to get feedback, to know if we're even hitting the target for our customer service towards our Parks and Rec customers, our end users, right? So that's that for now.
I think that's interesting because it's somewhat like Councilwoman Booth is saying, you know, include Garrett and the Boulder City High School in the survey. I mean, those are the users. You know, what do they think? And that feedback that we need. So I think same kind of thing, if I can put words in your mouth. Go ahead.
So if I'm understanding you right, I look at these success factors and this metrics, and these are supposed to be the way that our staff will come back and report to us that they are achieving strategy number one. These 3 bullet points right here will say everything that needs to be said about achieving strategy number 1 and 2, or 1 and all the action steps within there. And I think to your point, sometimes the metrics for me don't align with either the action steps and or sometimes clarify the goal.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so maybe if we did look at them, I mean, however we want to go through this, if we look through them and said maybe there's this discrepancy there where that could lead to some confusion, we can parse it out a little bit better and figure it out.
Certainly, and I would welcome that feedback. I would also say that there is also the constraint. Whatever is put forward as a metric means that you are having to measure it. And so in thinking about what data are available, that should also be a consideration so that you don't have to bring on a whole new econometrician to be able to even count progress towards these goals. So thinking about the data that you either currently have or that can be collected without feeling as though it takes lifting the world to do so.
Let me make a clarifying comment if I can and add to that. You know, I know that we do have, and I acknowledge we have a customer service link, right? But that's passive at very best. Typically, you know, generally we as humans go by the no news is good news, right? If we're not hearing complaints, we must be doing okay. And so I don't know many people that I've talked to who seem to be interested in the community activities who I can tell about the customer service link in the emails who have even gone on and done those. So when I talk about Parks and Rec specifically here, do we actively have a specific metrics, if you will, or feedback form? How was your sign up? Did the referees, you know, meet the goals of the competition? Did the field, was that in good shape? Was, you know, the start times appropriate? Whatever, you know, you might specifically make. I think we need to do better at, in this case, not just, you know, having a passive form out there, but proactively going out and asking, what were your goals, and did we meet them, and how, if so, and how not, if we didn't. So I don't want to get in the weeds on that. I just want to clarify. I get that we have that one, you know, form, and that's been an improvement, but certainly not what I would call the right thing in place for measuring at least that customer feedback.
Yeah, the action step includes administration of the survey. So the feedback that would be gathered is from the survey that is the first action step under Strategy 2, which is conduct a community outreach survey to identify programmatic needs.
Okay, that's for needs, not for what actually occurred,
Okay.
what they signed up for and what they did, right?
So-
We're looking for positive user feedback. You're talking a survey, two different things.
So we can certainly add an extra action step here on develop a method for gathering feedback from recreational users.
And so, and that was my example. I don't know if we want to go through every step that low into, you know, the weeds, if you will. So I think, you know, the mayor, other members can comment on that. We could spend 4 hours or an hour and a half, you know, so I don't know what the flavor of the conversation is going to be.
This is your time, however you would like to spend it. I'm open to it. Again, there are certain points that were provided in the written feedback where I feel for me to be able to carry out and make sure that your intention is being captured, there does need to be a little bit more guidance offered. I have those pulled out, but I certainly understand if there's additional feedback that needs to be given. If you would like to go through these by each strategy, I'm certainly willing, and we are able to do that right now. But again, I defer to the council on how you want to handle this.
Well, I like going through each strategy to clarify where we're at. And, you know, I make little notes that you can't read. So I think we're on the same page, literally. So I wrote down true survey ? I mean, it wasn't quite as erudite as my two council people have voiced, but that's the issue is, you know, we may put something out, but who answers the survey? So that's the question that I had too, is it true? Is it accurate? Does it envelop everybody? At any rate, I don't know. I'm comfortable with going through each strategy.
I am too. That's the only way we're gonna get it defined.
Okay.
Move past one. Let's go.
So if we go through each strategy, for instance, number one, continue to support, plan for, and manage Boulder City's physical recreation assets and amenities. You heard very clearly that we're interested in how to do the survey of the users, you know, or potential users. you
I
know.
believe that's actually the second strategy. So conducting the community outreach survey, so adding the youth feedback there under the action step under strategy 2.
Okay, so, again, I'm,
Positive, yeah, it's this one, positive. And so we'll say develop, let's see. Focus, positive user.
May I say
Okay.
something?
so if you can help me out, I don't care about the rest of them, help me out, it's because I'm the low man that doesn't have the understanding. So if you can say column whatever, or success factor and metrics when you refer something. So for instance, my true survey, the other survey, it's going to be under success factor and metrics.
No, so it will be under action steps, the third column from the left. Action steps,
Okay, so we're still on one, and we're not down here on positive user feedback. Okay, so we're on number one. I know I'm slow, but that's okay.
no, I need to apologize.
So we're going to say something that gets the survey of the users or potential users that can actually be done.
Yes, based on the feedback from Councilman Walton and Councilwoman Booth, I would add that. I believe that perhaps that is more appropriately placed on strategy 2. So her previous comment about including youth in the survey was related to the second strategy, not the first, when submitted.
And so on the second strategy, number 2, we would put those comments about the survey under
Action steps,
action steps.
yes,
So the second column,
yes.
would
Well,
be
third, but
that
yes.
survey. And so that's a little dot, or number 3, depending on how you would do it. That's where the survey would be. We all comfortable with that? Okay. And so for instance, when I did my notes on this, I said question mark true strategy. Where would I put things that I would like to see, like skydivers and swimming pools, and partner with Southern Nevada School District, Clark County School District with our basketball pool and tennis, and where would I put those?
Number 1, I would suggest. Number 1 as an action step. So we can call out skydiving and additional recreation with the list of examples that's already provided. And then an additional action step can be coordination with the school district on
Okay.
infrastructure.
And so that action step would still be in there?
Like on shared facilities? Is
Right,
that what you're thinking?
right.
Yeah.
So we have some shared facilities that are pretty significant, and sometimes, I'm not going to say the Clark County School District doesn't realize how much sharing we do with them and may not necessarily come back at us. That's a political comment. But that's the kind of thing that I was kind of saying. You folks comfortable with
Yep.
that?
So then we would have to have a success metric for that, right?
So we can have number of assets or amenities
Thank you,
maintained
Jill.
and improved, comma, including having just a separate standout count on the improvement and the investment for shared versus standalone.
Or actually, because I think we're looking to get them to share them with us, right? So maybe reporting on the number of shared
Assets or amenities. Yep,
from Clark County School District to us.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily maintenance. And then I also had a question on number of assets and amenities maintained or improved yearly. We'll be getting quarterly reports, so we'll be getting updates on that. I mean, they're not just doing that yearly, right? We're constantly in, like maybe on a quarterly basis or whatever, they're looking at our amenities and saying, okay, look, this isn't up to par. We need to make sure that's safe. We need to whatever. It's not just a yearly.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Updated to quarterly. Other comments on one?
No comments?
There's some general statements here. I just, it seems like we're partway there, but not all the way there. And if you go to the very first bullet point, resident and visitor utilization of city parks, rec facilities, and other physical assets. So are we going to start counting people at the parks? Or are we going to take, some kind of measurement and report back on, is it the number we're looking at, or that they're actually using it? And what's the measurement tool there, and how do we accomplish it? Some of these things say something, but they don't lead to anything.
Often, the metrics for parks and recreation for anything that has an admission is utilization rate. That is a very common metric that is used
The
across.
number.
Yes.
Okay.
And change in number every year. So resident and visitor utilization is the number of users.
So we're not, well, again, are we currently tallying the number of people other than the number of people that sign up for programs, right? We know the number of programs, we know the number of people that sign up. But there's a heck of a lot more that we have as amenities, and I'll use the splash pad as an example. Anecdotally, we can say, it's packed. What does that mean? If I don't, have 10 feet bubble around me, it's packed, or that there's 100 people? How do we know when we need another splash pad? That, look, this one is what we'll say overcrowded, whatever that could mean, right? Do we have a threshold to say, we're gonna add X additional facility, whatever it might be, another swing set, another slide, another, roundy round, whatever we call these things, when we get to this threshold? Right, so besides the number of programs and the signups, there's a lot of stuff that, that we are not counting per
Yeah.
se.
The outcome measure for this action step, which is developing that plan to guide exactly that, how those decisions are being made, whether that's from population density or use and degradation of the equipment, also a fairly common metric.
Right, but again, that talks about the use and maintenance, or the improvement and maintenance, not about actually,
Expansion,
well, just if our residents are using them, right? How do we know? Let's use Bootleg Canyon, since it says bike trail. Okay, we can make a plan, we're gonna go up there, we're gonna assess the quality of the trails every X number of weeks or months. And we are gonna set aside X number of dollars. How many people are going up there? I don't know, right? How many are from in town, how many are from out of town? Do we care about that? So when we talk over here about success factor, resident and visitor utilization, that's different than improvement and maintenance.
what would you like as the metric? Is it amount of money invested in Parks and Rec year over year? Or some
Great
other?
question, thank you, because, Robin, thank you for doing that. I don't mean to do that, that's kind of mean. because you should bounce it back to us, and we missed this along the journey. So please take our passion in a way that we care about the strategic plan, and it's not on you. It's on us. And so thank you for bouncing that back at us. It was very astute of you to do, and I appreciate it, because it does land on us to define that. So the question is for the council, do we want to know the number, or do we want to take that out? Because that success factor metrics either needs to be changed, or we need to add something on the action plan side, one or the other.
I'm smiling because I'm thinking out loud now. What do we do with Boot Lake Canyon? Our attitude is, I think in Boulder City, we make things free. We make things available. We make the slide free. And so when we come to some of this, I don't know that we count anybody sometimes for how many people go down to see the Rams. I don't know that we have so many amenities in Boulder City that it's hard for us to count the number within the space because we make it available. And, I know other towns do that, so how do we do that kind of thing?
I think maybe that comes in the assessment phase, right, of each of those things. Let's say Boot Lake Canyon or our parks or whatever. You go and you take a look at them, you see how they're looking, you see if the tennis nets look good, or if someone's done a tennis ball with fire on it. And, now you have a big hole, because those things happen, but you have to have eyes on it. So maybe instead of actually here, because it's talking about to support, plan, and manage, we're getting down to just supporting and planning, meaning we're coming up with the new ideas. But management is something that can be a metrics, right? We have eyes on it, we look, we see that the facilities that we are offering, the things that we are offering are to standard for visitors to visit.
Quarterly assessment of quality.
Yes. I think that's a metrics that can tell us whether or not what we have out there is being managed the way that it needs to be managed and upkept.
I think that may be part of we no longer have a handball court outside, we have a pickleball court. I'm sure somebody used the handball court sometime in my lifetime, but I never saw them do it. Okay, so
maybe could we change one of those metrics instead of saying residents and visitor utilization of parks or whatever? You'll be able to see that when you actually see the physical upkeep of it, right? So if you replace that with quarterly eyes on all of the facilities and or park and rec services that are made available and make sure that they're maintained at a quality level, then we're going to know.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know that we want to get down into counting. Some of that's just not practical, right? And there's no means of really accomplishing it accurately. Some things are use-based and they wear out from use. Others are just exposure to the UV and other elements, and they're going to wear out. So
So I've removed the first bullet and replaced that with the quarterly assessment per Councilwoman Jorgensen.
I think
Yep.
Yeah.
that's fair. Yep.
yeah.
Great. Other comments on one?
Yeah.
We're moving right along.
We are. I will have to take a break around 5 o'clock to move my flight if we are still going through these.
AM,
Sorry?
AM,
Certainly.
okay. All right, so we're going to go to number 2 then,
No, sorry, I had a comment on number 6.
on number 6.
No, number 2 of number 1.
I'm sorry. Strategy 6 of goal 1.
We're on number 2 of goal 1.
We're on strategy 2.
Oh, I thought he said we're going to goal 2.
No, strategy 2.
Oh, we're just down to strategy 2.
Yeah, we're
I'm
moving
sorry.
right along.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going way faster than I thought.
Some help there.
Okay.
Okay, strategy 2, thank you.
Okay, so this strategy, goal 1, sub 2, expand affordable, accessible, diverse, et cetera, for focusing those things that serve our youth. So what do we want to do with that? And that gets, I think, some of our survey questions. Go ahead.
On bringing up the splash pads, I don't even know if they're feasible, but I thought they should be a long-term goal. I wasn't talking about them being short-term goals, but long-term goals, because I'm sure there has to be some research, because I don't know how they have the water, if they can get water there to the spots where they would need it, and the amount of water pressure that they would need to run those. So when I recommend that, it was a long-term goal, not a short-term goal. So I may have that in the wrong spot then.
No, I think it is captured, based on our previous discussion, we did go to 2 and then we bounced back to 1.
Yeah.
Based on the previous discussion to 2, I see a few amendments here, adding inclusion of youth in the survey outreach for that first bullet under action items, and then also adding the development of new amenities based on the feedback, and then also developing a method for gathering regular feedback from recreational users to the survey
Well
point.
said.
That's good.
Yes.
So if we look at it, and it talks about program needs and preferences, and you look over and you see the metrics for it, it says number of new recreational activities and programs. But maybe what we need to do is to make assessments, ongoing assessments of, okay, how many people came and used this program? And if only one person for the whole year, or 2 people, then we know that program's no longer something that people are wanting, right? We change it out. So maybe not just say number of new recreational activities and programs, but a constant assessment of the usability, or else what's happening with the programs being offered.
So number of users, to be clear, of current programs.
Of current programs, to be able to truly assess if that's what's needed.
Yep, added. Other comments?
We're on 2. Anything else?
Because one day pickleball won't be the rage. It'll be
Right.
whatever the next thing is. Yeah.
It'll be handball. We'll have to give it.
And we'll go to number 3 then? We're
Number 3, there were submitted comments. So one of these mentioned an additional action step of modifying the existing multipurpose venue to serve as a permanent, smaller scale multipurpose venue. So essentially creating a new larger venue and then also making the existing one a permanent, smaller space for use. Are there other comments or edits?
I'd like to say something there. We use the multipurpose building all the time, and it could be used much more if you could hear in there, because the acoustics are so bad. So by putting new flooring and a drop ceiling in, that would add a lot, and that's a meeting space for about 50 to 60 people. I don't know what it is in there. You might know, Michael. That's all right. But it's a small venue, and then making the golf course pavilion a permanent meeting area for people. That was what I thought we should do.
Other comments?
I think those are both very reasonable, yeah. Like most what you say. So I've written down conference center. Again, I think we need one that has a bathroom.
Yes. We'll have to build, there's no reason they can't put a bathroom on over there.
Carl, you needy.
I know,
So with permanent amenities, perhaps added.
right. That's
Okay.
a better way of saying it,
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, much better.
yeah. Anything else on that one? Number 4, initiate and complete construction of the pool facility. And I would like to say that is short-term, but that would be dreaming, so I'll say it's long-term still. And a pool ad hoc committee recommendation, et cetera. I think all of those are rational. Anything else?
Yeah, while I appreciate the fact that we will have quarterly updates, I think, for any project of this sort, there needs to be a lot of steps in there, and the dates, how long, which ones overlap and which ones don't. So at some point, we need to create the scheduling plan for proceeding on that. And that might, it's long-term, so I hope that it happens, at least the plan sooner rather than later, certainly before, if the construction is long plan, we have to have creating the scheduling plan, talk to the architects, engage contractors, modify, that whole thing, ensure financing. And, after the election, we're going to know how this ballot question, and we're going to have to know if we have to pivot for financing or not. And so at some point, I don't know where we're going to add that, but,
We can put a bullet at the top that says creation of a pool project management plan,
okay.
Okay.
and that will have that built in. That should include all of the financing. Other comments on 4?
So under 4, we just did 4, except we turned the page, and then we're on secure funding for project on the swimming pool. Where do I put my need for off-street parking and RV parking
For the swimming pool?
for anything?
Oh, not there.
I would say probably not under the pool.
Where do you want it?
Off-street parking?
Do you want it number 7 under goal 1? Or do you want it,
Is that, do you consider that an amenity, or is that a code modification?
It might go under a different goal altogether.
It might be under infrastructure as a
Right.
goal.
right?
So keep that in there.
Okay,
Keep
Right.
that marked.
remind me. Okay. Yes,
Yeah, I think that'd probably be more appropriate under Goal 5, which is maintain dependable and reliable infrastructure.
okay, that's where I want it.
Okay.
Thank you. And so we are now moving to number 5 on our goal, under goal number 1, sub number 5. Increase resident knowledge and utilization of city's assets, amenities, programs, and services. Anybody have any comments on that?
Ish. Maybe I do, as far as, we'll see how it fits, and maybe it's somewhere else. And I appreciate that we want to increase the programs and the diversity of those programs for the youth, but maybe a statement while maintaining. And maybe the status quo for those that serve the senior population is what we want to do, but I don't want us to lose what we're doing for the senior population while we ensure that we focus on also in being inclusive of the youth. So somewhere in one of those, Robin, if we could find the way to ensure that we don't drift away from what we're doing well already.
We can add that to the narrative as well in the strategic plan, so that intro piece might be an appropriate way of ensuring that these are recreational offerings that are meant to serve all residents as well as visitors.
Does that get at the spirit of what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll move on to number 6. Go ahead.
And this is probably for Michael Mace, do we have dollars that we put towards tourism and advertising?
With our economic development budget, no, but with our partnership with the regional agencies that promote generally tourism, through our support of that, LVCVA, LVGEA, that's where we would be supporting it.
Okay, so
If I might add also, Councilmember Booth, the Chamber of Commerce really focuses
Yeah.
heavy on that. Yeah.
that's why I was wondering if we donated to the Chamber of Commerce or if we donated any funds, so maybe we should make it clear where these monies come from. Because we're really not doing that, are we?
You mean
Are
the
you
sep-
referring, oh,
To
Go
number,
ahead.
on number 6.
right, you're referring to the success factors and metrics? Because this is looking at the revenue that's being generated through taxes and visitation numbers, which we have software that helps to track that as well. So that's how we're measuring those successes. Looking at the baseline today in terms of seat tax revenue that comes to the city, and looking at visitation numbers, and then comparing that in the future to see if that's increased based on these efforts.
Thank you for the clarification.
Is this where I put down Boulder City is unique in so many different ways, including as a potential site for films or TV series or something like that? Is that what I would count as a tourism if they come in, bring their camera and do a film shoot? Would that be where this would be?
Is there a desire to intentionally go after those types of projects, or is it more just to frame it as the city being an excellent location for those activities?
Yes and yes.
Okay, so if it's a specific action, we can add an action step there, and then I can also add that to the narrative in the strategic plan about its sort of unique value proposition as a location for media.
Now, I throw that out as one person. How does my council feel about that?
I'm good with it.
I don't know what the pros and cons are of it. If it's heavy on the pros and light on the cons, I'm all in.
I know that we're currently doing that anyhow. We already have things that have been done here, commercials, different things that have been filmed here, movies too. It might be something you could put, develop targeted communication campaign publicizing recreational opportunities to potential visitors and opportunities for, I don't know what that would be.
Film and television production sites.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, if you go to Boston, you want to go to the bar.
Cheers.
Right? I don't drink, I still want to go see the bar. But at any rate, I think it's something that we could do that would, and so I put it as a option. Okay?
I have a couple comments down the call, or across the line there. Measurement of annual commercial tax revenue increases, is that a finance function? Or does economic development do that?
So it's a finance function, but the intent here with the lead department is the city manager would work with finance to get those numbers to be able to demonstrate to the council the success.
Okay, fair enough. And then again, the conversation, we're returning back to it. I know that we can track tourism in a variety of big brother ways, right? But we have here on the success factor and metrics, visitor utilization of city parks. I'm not sure what we're saying there, if we're again talking numbers, if we want to count those numbers, because the next bullet point says annual tourism numbers, and I don't know if that's exclusive to spending, the last bullet point there, based on, zip code where credit cards are used. Maybe there's others that show, cell tower hits from out of area, numbers. I don't know how that might work, but are we looking at counting the number of people that come to areas, or are we just looking at enhancing the desirability through marketing and maintaining and a variety of our unique features? So if you could answer that.
Sure. So the city currently pays for Pacer AI, which is a software that tracks visitation. So our economic development coordinator can identify a very specific area, a particular park, for example, and find out how many visitors came to that park in relationship to a special event. So we can track those types of numbers.
Special events, so the main ones we're talking about that we have. Do we do 4th of July also?
We do track for the entire city because obviously the visitors are coming to the entire community.
Okay.
It can be the entire community. It can be as granular as a particular park, using geofencing to see which people entered that area.
Geofencing.
Yes.
That's a fancy Big Brother term. Okay, thank you. Thank you for answering that. And therefore, I think we're there, just using technology that economic development is using and monitoring. Some reports on that would be great, though I don't know that we've had any consistent updates on the numbers throughout the year, or if we focused only on weekends of major events. But, you know, since we're going to be reporting out quarterly, I'd love to see these reports included quarterly, and maybe, you know, look at specific areas to let us know how many people are showing up at Hemingway Park, or maybe from out-of-towners at Veterans Memorial Park, or, you know, other places that we're not maybe typically tracking and reporting out currently.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It also might be a good thing to report, is it in the bi-monthly report where we get all the statistics from different things as far as like fire and safety and everything? It might be a measurable, is that something we can put in here? Or is that something that can just happen? That it'd be a measurable thing that was kind of included in there, you know, tracked visitors or whatever of some sort, and here's the numbers we have.
Yeah, one of the things we've begun doing, because at the request of the council, is as you are reviewing special event grant applications, providing the visitation numbers for those events above a typical weekend. We know roughly how many visitors, non-residents, come in to Boulder City every weekend. And so then we zero in on that event, and we are able to determine the net increase as a result of that special event.
All right. We're shifting to goal number 2, sub 1. Diversify revenue streams for long-term financial sustainability. And so my question was, what do we do now? And inasmuch as we have a property tax cap, how do we use any other revenue source? Speaking of identifying opportunities to leverage and monetize.
There also was a comment from Councilman Walton that was submitted related to bullet 2, I believe, on the
Yeah.
land leases.
Thank you for your wording that you included for that particular comment down in my comments. I appreciate that, unless staff created that wording for me. Thank you. And of course, this is not a scientific report, but I've had some expression of concerns among, you know, some members of the public who've reached out to me about the continued proliferation of land leases. And so I want to put it to the group for conversation. Is there another way that we want to approach the ideas of requests for more solar or energy, let's just say energy development in general, or leasing land? Are we comfortable with the way it is? Are we comfortable with the volume that's been developed in our city limits? Is there a point when we're going to make some statement that, you know, that's about enough? Or, you know, where do we want to land on that? So I'm just putting that out there if anybody wants to have any conversation on it.
Which number are you talking about, Steve?
Goal 1, strategy, or I'm sorry, goal 2, strategy 1, diversify revenue streams. And then action step, the second bullet point, says identify opportunities for multi-year and longer-term land leases. That's the one I'm specifically referring to for discussion.
So my thought process here is this is diversifying revenue streams. So we're just simply talking about, we already have that as a revenue stream. What if we put that somewhere like maintain community character through the growth control ordinance, and we take a look at it a little bit about whether or not that's how we want to grow? Do we want to put that kind of growth?
No, I'm totally open. I don't have any preconceived statements on it, other than I've just felt some comments coming my way about, hey, you know, how many more are we going to do? right? And since this bullet point mentioned long-term land leases, I thought now's the time. We can put it wherever. I don't have any preference or ideas on it.
Because is it location specific? Is it amount of, would it be amount of property specific? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what is the enough is enough? Or is it revenue specific?
Great questions. And maybe the bullet point can be changed to create an additional tool for assessing the viability of these land leases. You know, not necessarily just identify opportunities, but really dig deeper into, is this really what we want to do? And maybe that's the place, and just create, you know, some type of checklist or flow that leads us to whether or not it really suits the community need overall, balancing it with the income that we get, right?
I've had these same thoughts and asked that question is, how much do we need? I mean, do we need more money? And if we need more money, you know, how are we going to access more money? Or how do we assess what our monetary needs are? How is it that, you know, why would we want to do something if we don't need the money? As opposed to, let's make money and then spend it somewhere. So I think it's a need versus a want, and do we really want if we don't need? And that's kind of, you know, just because somebody wants to buy our land, does that mean we want to sell it?
Lease it.
I just think that we should be open to listening to anything and everything. We should always be open to listening, because what happens if solar goes away? How are we going to support ourselves? Because if we didn't have the solar, we'd lose half of our budget that way. So we've always, I think, got to keep an open mind, but I agree with what you're saying, how much is too much, and do we need to stop? But I think we should be open to new and maybe more modern things where we don't have to have so much glass down in the valley or something like that, but always be open to listening. That's just my thing.
I really appreciate that, Councilman Booth, because the reality and the reason I say that is we have a property tax cap. We are not going to make more money with property tax, no matter how many big opportunities we have to build a bigger house or something. So we have, the state of Nevada has limited what we can do with getting money through property tax. So we have been, other people have put us in the position that we can take credit for having more money and being able to afford all of those swing sets, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that balance that we have to have is, what do we need and how do we position ourselves? Solar will not last forever. The sun might, but a panel won't.
New technology.
Et cetera. So those are things that I think are reasonable to put in your prudent financial stewardship. And number one, I think, is a good place to have that discussion.
So can you summarize that for us?
Implement process for assessing the need and viability of current and future land leases in line with community need.
Or good.
Good job. Can we go then to number 2 on goal 2? Conduct an annual budgeting process with a focus. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? Anyone want to say anything other than what's there?
I want to add one thing, and I don't know where to add it at, and that was that when we're talking about prudent financial stewardship, that I think one of the goals should be to receive the Triple Crown Award every year. That should be a goal, I think, every single year, a short-term goal, because all of the rest is required to do by our financial department, and we expect them to do that, but the Triple Crown Award is something that I would hope they always work for.
I think that's reasonable.
I don't know where it would go.
I added that
Well, it's a
tentatively
metric.
under strategy 3 as a
Okay.
metric.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we moved to strategy 3.
Oh, no, just that I think was the most appropriate place for your,
So what I was
comment.
asking, do we have anything on 2? And I heard something on 3, which meant I bypassed 2 unless someone else got something to say on 2.
Well, I'll throw this out and we can decide where it goes, but I placed it in the comments on the strategic plan, not the implementation plan. But presenting, well, we have it right there, never mind. You did a good job of putting that in there, thank you. So there you have it.
You may want to get that in writing.
Oh, there's a video.
Okay. Go ahead.
Going back just to number 1 for just 1 second, that we talked about the assessment of what our needs are. Do we need more money? So I agree that we want to diversify our revenue stream. Is there a possibility we want to put another strategy in there where we have an assessment of really what our needs are in each of these areas to determine whether or not we do have this great need for more money to be coming in or how it looks, right? So what's the purpose behind maybe taking some of our resources here in Boulder City to utilize in that way? Is there a reason for it and a need for it? I mean, maybe if we did an assessment, I wonder if we ever do an assessment. Do we need more toilet paper rolls? Do we need, I mean, I'm just being facetious, but you have all sorts of things in a city that are consumables, all sorts of things that are actual things needed to utilize. There's positions, there's all sorts of things. I just wonder, do we ever do something like that?
So I think part of strategy 2 in conducting the annual budgeting process is that reassessment of the city needs. Each department is responsible for evaluating their needs to accomplish the goals and the expectations of that department. That's reported out.
That will
And
also come back in with their wants too.
they will, but with this goal being very specific on a balanced budget, part of the process that the city manager is going to be doing, working with the various departments, is what is your needs relative to the other departments? Here is our revenue stream. This is the maximum number of dollars we're going to receive. And if all those goals can't be met, then that's where collectively the city staff is going to work out how we accomplish the department goals and still present a balanced budget to the city council. And that means there's going to be trade-offs. Certain things are going to be able to be advanced, others are not. But the council set the expectation that you want a balanced budget delivered to you, and that's where the staff works through that process to deliver on that goal.
Speaking of the electrical people, thank you for the air conditioning, Mr. Stubitz. We have kind of a unique city in that way too. So we pay linemen, and we have to hire people in our utility. So is that addressed in the infrastructure, or is that addressed in this one where we're doing needs for more money?
I believe that's infrastructure, so there's the capacity assessment for each utility to determine short-term and long-term need under, it's Goal 5, Strategy 5.
Okay, thank you. So, did we get enough where we're at as far as comments that you've got enough to write down? And that brings us to, where are we going now? Are we still on
4.
2 of 4?
I think we're on number 3.
So we talked about a triple crown on three
On 3.
of 3. Or did we get that done? So now we can go to 4?
Mm-hmm.
Did we do number 3?
Triple Crown was 2.
Well, that's in finance. I mean, goal 3. Are we?
Oh,
No, we're not on
still on
goal
Goal
3.
2.
Oh, we're not on goal 3 yet.
We're goal 2,
Sorry.
number 3, triple crown. That's the only thing we said there. Number 4, increase fiscal and budgetary transparency. I think by law, that's what we do. And if we don't, we go to jail. So that one's easy.
I have a question on that. Is there something specifically, I mean, are we not as transparent? What more can we do, I guess, is the question in our transparency? It feels like we're an open book already. Anybody can go online and click through the entire finance section and look at everything. Is there anything more to increase, or is this a maintain?
I think there's always opportunity for improvement, especially when it comes to transparency with all functions of a city organization. So I don't have concerns with this goal being in the plan, because we can always look for additional ways to communicate and be transparent about the city's finances.
I mean, that's why we have citizens who teach us every meeting, what about and how come. And so we don't have all the answers, and we're appreciative of people who say, well, how come and why not? So I think, we believe in it. We believe in the open meeting law and everything that goes with it.
Thank you.
Can I just go on then to number 5 of 2? And continue to provide funding support to key nonprofits and volunteer organizations active. Do we want to add more of that, or could we get a graph of targeting the needs and the resources, or comments?
So we have under the strategy 5, right? The next bullet point, or the next line over in action steps, meet yearly with nonprofits and organizations to identify needs. This is kind of a question and leading into maybe more conversation. Do we only have a certain number of nonprofits that we will provide funds to? Are there certain benchmarks? I mean, I know there's accounting benchmarks to maintain their nonprofit status and so forth, but has the city identified limiting benchmarks for those that will only contribute to? Are there others that we can, would, should, or where are we at with all of that?
Well, the annual budget that's presented to the city council does have a section that addresses nonprofits. And over the years, as requests have been made, council has considered those requests and adding those to the budget for that year. The city has agreements with several nonprofits like the Senior Center, where we have committed certain funds on an annual basis. So that's something that's reassessed every year as part of the budget process, based on requests made, assessment of the existing agreements, and any additional revenues.
Thank you. So then the second bullet point under the action steps there for number 5, keeping my page intact, is it? Identify and communicate ongoing in-kind support. So one of our action steps is to somehow communicate out to the community at large, hey, we're in the budget process. If you're a nonprofit that may be seeking some kind of funds through city, now's the time to make a request. Are all of the requests made during our budget process, or do we say historically we set aside X dollars based on the requests that we have received, and therefore in the budget we set aside that number of dollars, and we could reach it or not reach it, or even go over in requests? How do we anticipate that going forward?
I think how we currently do it is based on ask. An organization asks the city if the city is willing to support. I think what these 2 action steps are doing is a little more proactive. The first bullet point is meet yearly with the nonprofits. So we would proactively engage with them. What are your needs for this year? And see how that could be incorporated in the proposed budget that comes before the city council. The second bullet point, identify and communicate ongoing in-kind support. That is to further elaborate how the city, not necessarily through direct financial contributions, but supports nonprofits in other ways. And so identifying how we provide that support and communicating that to the council and the public.
Great. I like the proactive nature of that. Thank you. I wouldn't add anything else to that then.
Okay. We'll go to number 6 from goal number 2. Develop financial management plan for funding of infrastructure and historic preservation projects following the anticipated loss of the RDA, the Redevelopment Act, I take it?
The RDA, the redevelopment agency, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Which ends in 2029.
And so that is a redevelopment agency that we created for the city of Boulder City. And so that we created, and can we recreate it again?
State law allows for that process. We would have to establish a blighted area and meet certain criteria. But we are not able to extend the life of our RDA. It will end after the 30-year period.
Okay, so it would require, it still could be done, but would require a specific finding to be made in order to do something.
Correct. It's a very, NRS talks specifically the steps that a municipality has to go through to identify an area that is blighted, meeting certain criteria, preparing a study, and that study goes before the council to determine, does it meet that in order to establish the RDA?
So our question then is, do we want to do anything with the RDA going away that will be a revenue source that we need to continue on, or whatever? What are we using the funds now in the city for the money we get with the revenue?
The RDA funds' primary purpose is to encourage reinvestment within the RDA district, which is all of our commercial areas within the community. And so that's through direct grants, reimbursable grants to local businesses. That is reinvestment in infrastructure. So for example, the council approved the $1.1 million for upgrading the electrical along Nevada Way, again, to encourage redevelopment, with the goal that at the end of the life of the RDA, there's greater reinvestment, greater property tax revenue being generated, and it's met its intent.
So I guess what I'm asking, do we need those RDA funds now? We've already got some that have to be expended. Do we need more? And that gets me back to the, do we need more?
So as part of the budget process this year, we are going to be coming to the council to talk about our projections on the remaining years of the RDA, what we think it will collect in terms of revenue, get direction from the council on how we should utilize those funds, and also be discussing with the council how the city is planning for the end of the RDA and how we address that financially. So I think it'll be that opportunity to have a detailed discussion on answering your question, Mayor.
So that would be an action plan to have that discussion. Go ahead.
So then, if I understand you right, we could renew the RDA if we went through all the steps and processes and asked them if they could do it. Would that include the entire boundaries that we currently have that are RDA boundaries?
I would say that it would be difficult to recreate the RDA today that was created in 1999.
Could we, though, do the business, like we do have a blighted area? We do have a blighted area. Is that something that could be created specifically down in that area and for it?
There is a process that the city could go through to create an RDA. Again, it'd have to meet all the criteria and standards that are stipulated within state law.
Right, then is that something that we want to put on here as something we want to investigate or look into? That's all I'm asking with that.
I think the city attorney wants to.
It's just here in the the strategic plan, it requires the city to identify the historic and current RDA investments, match current upcoming project costs to identify funding gaps, and identify alternate funding sources, essentially creating a plan if we no longer have the RDA as we currently know it, which even if we were to create a new RDA, the characteristics of that RDA would likely be vastly different than what they are now, and the revenue streams
Right.
would be likely different. So really, I think the action step just might be possibly assessing the next steps when the current RDA expires.
And I guess the third bullet point, identifying alternate funding sources, that could be one of the alternatives.
Just identifying a new RDA and going through that process. Great, yeah.
So I think that's incorporated in that action step.
And did we not get something out of the RDA?
We've gotten the revenue. that was
boundary? The boundary of the RDA changed?
The boundaries have not been changed.
So the Storybook Homes used to be, but isn't anymore?
Storybook Homes is still in the RDA.
Legislatively, what did we do with the RDA in Boulder
Well,
City
let's
that
talk,
we changed?
I think we should keep on the strategic plan, and really what we're addressing here.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Did you get all that?
So based on the comments, I'm amending the third bullet to read, identify alternative funding sources, including assessment of the viability of a new RDA, implementing anticipated investments into the multi-year strategic plan.
Sounds good. Anybody else want to change anything on that? Then we'll move to Goal 3. Item number 1 under Goal 3. Reduce barriers to achieving diverse housing types consistent with growth control ordinance. And I had a question on the second bullet point of number 1 of goal number 3. And is that statement of current policies that prevent diverse growth consistent with the growth control ordinance, is there differentiation between houses or people or businesses?
So there were also 2 rounds of submitted comments from Councilwoman Booth and Councilman Walton on this as well. So one of the requests was a modification of to promote as the question. I think Councilwoman Booth's comments were related to ensuring that townhouses were a viable option within the code. I think Councilman Walton's points were about ensuring that there wasn't modification of the growth ordinance. But
Right,
please
there were 2
correct me
points.
if-
The word prevent needs to be replaced with promotes, right? Which I think you got that covered. And then, yeah, just to make it super clear, we're not going to change anything relative to what we call our controlled growth ordinances that find what works within that.
Yep, consistent with, and I'm adding
Consistent
the
with.
word current,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah.
Can I say something? I wanted to also add in there that our codes don't, I think we're going to start bringing those codes up to date because they're very stagnant and they haven't been changed in years, so we don't have a townhouse code right now. And then stepping down to number 2, affordable housing. The city owns several small parcels, which would be great for building townhomes on. And maybe the city could work with developers to take those small parcels and only build townhomes on them so that we'd have more affordable housing in Boulder City, and work with that builder to give them an incentive to build some townhomes, because those become more practicable for either small families or a senior because of the cost. So that was what I just thought might really help in that strategy.
Other comments? I had a comment about RV parking and the time frame to plan, approximately 2 years, change the ordinance if we wanted to change the ordinance for townhomes, for instance, or,
So that's the zoning ordinance we're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And the affordability that they're talking about in here.
question mark, blank looks.
Well, I'm not sure what the barriers are, other than, developers coming in and asking to buy land to develop, right? I don't know that the city has barriers, and maybe they are, and I'm not aware, and I'll acknowledge that. But, are we talking about the city, and Michael, maybe you can comment on this. Are we talking about barriers that are city created, if you will, or city barriers that won't allow development within our controlled growth ordinance? And if there are that we've created, maybe we need to identify what they are. Under the action steps, identify and implement policies that improve permitting and construction, but, that doesn't still get the request from a developer to build. Maybe that's a byproduct, but not exactly the same. And then, as needed, consider modification of the current policies, and maybe this is what we're talking about, the zoning ordinance, because if townhomes aren't specifically noted, then maybe that's a barrier. So, but other than that, I don't know what our barriers are that we have created that we can remove. I'm
So-
interested in learning.
Yeah, so a couple of examples. As was already noted, with our existing Title 11, there are limitations on the ability for townhome and multifamily development. And so by updating that code, that would provide for that opportunity. Secondly, there is limited land available for the development of these types of uses. If the city council in the future wanted to advance a ballot question for particular parcels as noted by Councilwoman Booth, to see if the voters were willing to sell them to developers that would be for that specific use, that would be another way of addressing this action step.
Can I give an example?
Sure.
Right next to the library, there's a parcel of land that I don't know how many townhomes you could build over there, maybe 14 to 20. That would be a prime example of what I was talking about, is that type of land, and make it so that you do have affordable housing in that area. Because you really couldn't build too many homes over there because of some of the problems with that land. But townhomes would be perfect, and if we could give some incentive to a developer to come in and build those more affordable houses, that would, I think, benefit the community.
And then if I turn the page, because I'm turning the page now on number 2 of strategy 2 of goal 3, it brings housing through public-private partnerships. And so this has become an issue in the city of senior housing, for instance. Do we allow partnerships with a developer to do something that would ostensibly be listed for senior housing, and how do we want to allow that or encourage it or whatever? Question mark.
The wording of this strategy is intended to reflect that there has not been specific guidance from the council on how they would like to handle that situation. That is why it is intentionally about identifying and considering what is even available for that, including identification of the land. Just because you're identifying the land doesn't mean that you're committed to necessarily using it for it, but at least it allows you to evaluate your options, should you choose to go down that path.
So can we do that now? We probably could do it now. The issue is we need something to hold our feet to the fire of when or if we're going to do it in our strategic plan. Our strategic plan can say, no, we never want to do it, or yeah, we want to consider it. That would be our strategic plan decision point at this point. Do we want to consider senior housing, for instance, to be available in a public-private partnership way.
For my 2 cents, I think there's a lot of potential options, and there's a lot of potential pros and cons that come with every option. And I think the prudent thing is, I don't know that we could commit in a strategic plan that we're going to, pick 2 options and make them work or whatever. I don't want to get stuck into trying to put a square peg into a round hole. But I think keeping the language at least on the strategic plan so the conversation continues, and then, considering, investigating, looking into what those options might be, and considering what the benefit could be to the community and the liabilities that come with it, and then making decisions from there, would suit my comfort level at least.
And I think that's why it's under long-term. So this isn't a short-term thing. This is a long-term reporting back on our strategic plan as keeping it in front of us as a consideration in a strategic plan as opposed to something to do now.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Identify and consider.
Right.
Not.
So this is something that is a strategic plan as opposed to a strategic do it now. So are we comfortable with that particular metric?
I'm not uncomfortable with it. I mean, I don't mind the idea that we have the ability to at least identify and consider. There's nothing wrong with taking a peek at and leaving options open and identifying and considering, and then seeing at that time if it's a correct concept or option for Boulder City. It just allows us the opportunity now that we are crossing roads that I think everyone in the nation is crossing, and that is affordability for housing, and we have a housing shortage of sorts in that direction. So, yeah, I'm very comfortable with that.
Same,
I'm the same.
okay? So we'll leave that on our long-term strategery. Couldn't resist. That brings us to number 3, third strategy under number 3 goal. Improve accessibility and responsiveness of public-facing permitting and planning service functions, and our success factor metrics talk about staff participation in customer service training. And I just wrote down plot increase based on projections and numbers of employees, for what that's worth. Anybody have any thoughts? Customer service training is basically what it amounts to.
Well, we still have those customer surveys, right? At the end of each, isn't that each city employee has, when they put out a communication or something, there's also on our website?
Yes.
So, that's a metric that we could use too, is the responses from customer service or surveys that are on there. So, that's something that could be continued. You always have to, even though you may once be great, doesn't guarantee next year you will be.
So we're going to continue doing what we're doing and endorse that thing that we're doing. We'll move to number 4 if there are no other comments there. Under goal number 3, continue streamlining business licensing services and associated processes, and that gets into the average time that we do it and the number of new businesses and the customer service survey responses. And I think that's kind of what we're doing short term. We can continue to look at that.
There's one additional thing I'd like to
Okay.
inquire about. So we have a bi-weekly projects coordination meeting. Is that what we call it, Michael, with the people that are doing a development, whether it's private or residential or commercial, whatever.
Correct, says the private project coordination meeting.
Private Project Coordination Meeting, PPCM. So either in 3 or 4, wherever it might belong, I'd like to see that we add communication, that we do a better job or continue the great job or whatever it is about notifying those folks that are doing a project in the community, whether it's residential, commercial, or some other type, that they're notified of that private project coordination meeting, that they're specifically invited to it on a regular basis, not just, hey, we have it, but maybe a phone call, we haven't seen them at all, and say, hey, you might consider coming to this. There might be some valuable information that we could get from you or you could get from us. And somewhere along in there add, communicate more and be more proactive about getting those private project coordination meetings attended by those who are doing the projects.
How about promote the opportunities for participating in the private project coordination meetings with developers and residents?
Good
Yeah,
word.
and whichever one that goes in, I'm fine, but I'd love to see that added in there.
Good word. We'll move to number 5. Under goal number 3, expand resources that increase private reinvestments into the community, vet and identify grants, etc., and implement programs that align with Boulder City's needs and budgets. Mr. City Manager, any comments on that we need to do or want to do, or anything from the council that?
Does it align with your expectations?
I don't have anything to add on that.
I don't.
We'll move to number 6. Audit is needed and is needed to amend current codes. I think this is your baby.
I have something on
Go
that.
ahead.
Tammy, how long is it going to take to do the codes? Do you think, it says long-term, which I mean, long-term, you're always updating, but to do the new code system and everything, is that going to be like 3 years, 2 years?
Well, specifically regarding the zoning chapter, an RFP was just sent out.
Okay.
So we're waiting at this point to even see if we have any respondents.
Okay. I thought we were getting some software or something, so no, we have to
No,
actually hire somebody
we
to
have
do
to
that?
hire a
Okay.
consultant.
So it could be long-term then?
Well, we're hoping it won't be too long-term. I don't have an exact estimate on time. Hopefully, the
I
responders
don't,
will have an idea.
and I have no idea how long it takes for somebody to go through all of our zoning codes and
So
update
the intent is to hire a consultant that will evaluate Title 11 in its entirety and identify ways to update and improve, make more user-friendly the code. I would anticipate that the RP process will be several months, and then we would move forward with the consultant, and we could get it accomplished within a year time frame.
Okay. So it would be midterm and long range, because we'd always be updating. Okay. So that would be my only change right there, that it's both, basically.
And before we have a recess, let's see if we can fit in number 6. Under goal number 3, audit and is needed amend current codes. I think that plays into the prior discussion. Anything somebody wants to add to that?
This is just specific to commercial, so it's great, yeah.
And we'll just leave it at that, and we will take a recess. What time do you have to leave, 5 o'clock?
No, I moved my flight back.
Okay,
I
good
can stay
choice.
until 7:30.
Oh, we cannot offer anything.
I know I drank too much soda. Thank you, Matt.
Been up since 5, so you win, you're the winner.
That just means tonight I'm taking a bunch of NyQuil.
Boy.
You're getting smart food, so you're really smart when you get done. He's about to come on strong.
Can only go up.
So we'll call the meeting back to order. We're on goal number 4. Number 1 under goal number 4, increase awareness of economic benefits of historic preservation for the city. And completion will always be going because history goes both directions. Right? And anybody have anything they want to say about that? So if none, we'll go to number 2. You ready?
Yeah, it just came out of my mouth. That has to do with Historic Preservation
Right.
Committee, right? Like the awareness, they do that, remember, historic preservation awareness, right? Is that a metric that you could put in there?
Certainly, the commission would be one opportunity, but the city staff could also help to promote that.
Yeah, but just as, I mean, I know that they do that too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It'll always be before us because we get to hear what they're talking about. We will move to number 2.
I have a question on that.
Okay.
So we're talking about in strategy 1, the economic benefits specifically, right?
Yes.
So is this going to come from, I'm not sure where we're, because the only thing that we are getting income, right, where we can use that, maybe geofencing or, you know, some other feature, but where our businesses have increased visitation because of the unique history behind Boulder City. Are there other areas where there's measurable economic benefit because of our unique history or the preservation efforts of the history here in town?
Yes, so one of the goals in the Historic Preservation Plan was to look at the economic benefits, and some of the things that came out of that analysis were, for example, the property values in historic districts, looking at nationwide studies, are higher than in other parts of the community. So that would be another economic benefit.
Okay, so we're just kind of increasing our awareness, and that's the goal.
Correct.
Okay. fair
This was based on the feedback that there was perhaps a lack of understanding of why historic preservation can and should be a priority for the city among residents.
enough. Right, thank you.
And then we'll go to number 2 under goal 4, increase the use of city-owned historic physical assets. And this is probably where we're going to say something about the water filtration plan, the old airport hangar. Do we have specifics under our long-term goal that we're looking at, the time frame? And I'll ask the city manager maybe if we have some specific plans.
There are currently no specific plans, but the intent with these action steps is that we would look at this over the next 5 years and come to the council with potential options to implement this goal.
And with that strategic plan having regular times before the council, quarterly or yearly reevaluations, we will hear about that.
Correct.
And having gone by there, it's probably a long-term project.
Correct.
Yes.
If we're also interested in the adaptive reuse of these, or the opportunity for adaptive reuse, is there not a possibility that whatever wanted to come in, or whoever wanted to come in, maybe could also help in the getting it up to snuff, I guess I should call it, if I want to call it that? Would we not at some point possibly look at reuse strategies and then invite those people who want to reuse, if it's for a business or something like that, to come in and help with some of the bringing it up to the level that it needs to be?
Correct. So as an example, if the city council wanted to explore proposals for adaptive reuse of the historic airport hangar, We would do an RFP. We would have the developers provide those responses, similar to what occurred several years ago. Those would be presented to the council, and the council would give direction on that.
We could do even something looking at an RFP with a public-private partnership of some kind.
I think that would be a magnificent idea.
Yeah, at what point in the project, because it says here as one of the metrics, improvement of the two buildings, which is kind of vague. Improve to what point if we're going to bring in a private party?
Yeah, so that's reinvestment in those buildings, whether it is by the city or a private developer.
Okay.
All right, so then we'll go to number 3. Under goal number 4, maintain certified local government status, and we will continue to do that as the CLG dictates. Any other conversations about that? We'll go for that. So that brings us under 4. Under number 4, expand available grants, support incentivizing reinvestment in historic properties. And do we have anything that involves veterans or cemeteries or anything else? And anybody have any other suggestions or questions?
Do we need to include words of, since historic district, SHPO? I believe it's SHPO.
The,
The guidelines to keep buildings in historic, the guidelines in the, I think it's SHPO, right?
Yeah, the current grant programs that the city council has adopted require compliance with the Secretary of Interior's standards, as well as the city's own historic preservation ordinance. So it's presumed that with these grant opportunities, it would follow those current guidelines.
Okay, so we don't need to include like SHPO or, okay.
we can actually have reports, could we not, on how they do? I think when we report it, then it becomes accountable, to your point, I think.
I think also, under the success factor and metrics, we're talking about, well, and maybe this doesn't directly hit it, Member Fox, but number of partnerships formed with stakeholders, e.g. government agencies, financial institutions. I wonder if, we just, that's then implied that we're compliant with government agencies, including any and all of them, SHPO included, unless we want to specifically, have it listed in there.
No, if it's presumed, then I think it's okay.
Yeah, again, I mean, you could call out every agency. You could call out one, but exclusion of others. I think it's better to just say government agencies. And so obviously SHPO would be one of the government agencies we'd be partnering with.
Thank you.
So in the strategic plan, we will have reports on what we're doing.
Yes.
Any other things on that one? We'll move to goal 5. Identify and pursue new and unique funding opportunities to develop, operate, maintain, and renew infrastructure projects identified and prioritized through the government capital improvement plan. So I just wrote down wastewater pumps, where we're going with our wastewater over the hill or down, up and over and down towards the lake. Would that be one of those that would certainly be an ongoing and as well as a long-term?
Would you like that as a separate category? So wastewater is called out in strategy 3, lead in natural resource conservation and stewardship. The first item is consider the recommendations from the water and wastewater feasibility study, and then consider implementations.
And so that's already in there.
On those
Okay,
topics.
so I don't need to put a new capital improvement plan with that. Okay. Anybody else have anything else that is already controlled, put in somewhere else as well, or not? And if not, it's ongoing. And then number 2 under number 5, perform biannual reviews of the comprehensive asset management plan for all city infrastructure, integrating conditions assessments, life cycle determinations, and preventive maintenance programs. And we have a list of things that are there. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I think this is, I'm looking forward to receiving these reports. One thing that's going to be important for us in our, maintenance of our infrastructure going forward for the years to come, and that are relative to our conversations with the Water Authority about reclamation of our wastewater and so forth, is to look at, and I'm talking water in this particular, but it could be all of our infrastructure, what's our 5 and 10 and 25 year expectation for maintenance and replacement? And what do we need to plan for long term, and how much do we expect to invest in those, or how long do we feel we're going to get out of the current infrastructure before there's going to be substantial capital improvement costs that may be able to be covered by the utility funds, or that may require specific CIP funding to cover some of those infrastructure costs. And I think that's really important for us to know going forward. We've got a lot of great stuff going on with our electrical infrastructure. I don't believe, Joe's not here, that we've had a single outage electrical this summer. As a footnote to this conversation. And if we have, knock on wood. Thanks, Brittany. I hope I didn't jinx your neighborhood. But yeah, it's been fantastic. But I think we need to really look closely at that water and wastewater and see what that infrastructure is going to look like going forward because of the conversations we're going to be having with the Water Authority. So I'm not proposing any changes, just emphasizing this really is an important issue, and we need these reports quarterly on how we're doing on that capital asset management plan.
I think specifically it talked about dollars saved on preventive, in the words preventive maintenance. Yes.
I'm just going to say, on top of what Steve said, I agree with him. What I hear a lot of times from the public is we dump the water in the desert, so they feel like they shouldn't have the same expectations. So I'm excited to hear what the Water Authority is going to bring forth in October. I think that's when they're coming back to let us know. So I think that's a really important piece of the pie, and thanks for bringing that up, Steve.
And is Public Works an adequate department for that, or does utilities need to be included, or Public Works covers it and we're fine?
Well, we have, Public Works is the lead, but Utilities, Finance, and Parks and Rec are also involved.
Perfect.
Okay. Brings us to number 3 under number 5. Lead in natural resource conservation and stewardship. We did that. Number 4, pursue public infrastructure projects to support infill development throughout the city. Go ahead.
I just want to go back to 3. I just want to know why lead?
Because part of this was in modeling behaviors that could be considered best practices for residents to also see.
Okay, so lead in the community,
Mhm.
but not in the valley.
No. Yes. For the community to set best practices or examples of conservation. So part of this is in the actual management of resources at the municipal level, and then also developing and communicating best practices for stewardship for residents.
Should we not just say demonstrate best practices in natural resources or conservation? Just.
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 4, pursue public infrastructure projects to support infill redevelopment throughout the city. Councilwoman Booth gets to some of the things that you're talking about.
Yes.
You have anything else you want to add in that?
Well, on number 4,
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of where what I really was alluding to, I think, was that the public doesn't feel like they have to remove their grass yet because we're just dumping in the desert. So I think that once we do that, then it'll be, we have more leverage.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Turn the page. Number 5, conduct capacity assessments for each utility to determine short-term and long-term resource adequacy needs. And obviously, we've been doing that, and someone want to say anything else on?
I have a comment on that one.
Okay.
I had suggested that we build our own solar farm, and I just talked to Mr. Stubitz, and they did look into that. It's not feasible, but they're working on something else. So cross that out when I put in there. Thank you.
Okay.
Put number 6 in there about the RVs.
Yes, so the
Oh,
code
can-
on the RV parking.
Can I put that there?
Yes, what would
Number
you like it to say?
6. Explore and promote local parking for RVs and evaluate parking needs in the city.
Are we looking for compliance to the NRS?
I think it would be to assess more than require. Having gone down some streets, I think it's going to be hard to require at times certain as much as over the next 5 years, probably get to what we need to be at.
So our overarching goal is to come into compliance with that over the next 5 years.
Right. Now, having said that, state law still exists. And so I don't want to
Have a goal
raise
that
a red
says,
flag
yeah, have a goal that says we're not.
that we are trying to not do something. So I think we as a city need to do all that we can do in order to be able to be compatible with and in line with state law.
Find solutions and strategies to come into compliance with state law for parking on the side of the road or whatever.
So there's all sorts of things.
What do you got?
Well, I'm just not sure I understand where, I get that, and I agree with that. But what, so the strategy, I'm not even sure if you've modified it based on the comments from Member Jorgensen, but are we saying that our strategy is to, come into or encourage or find compliance, better compliance methods for, state law insofar as we're talking about parking and so forth?
I think the word is facilitate. In other words, we as a city need to help people as opposed to any other onerous things. I think we need to give people some hope of what their options are and encourage them to follow those state mandates.
So action steps or success factors, what are we thinking there?
So the success factor would be to see that there is improvement in the compliance within the city.
Okay, then the action steps to get there. I'm asking, I don't know what we're going to do. Like, are we talking zoning, additional commercial areas for hopefully private reinvest or investment for parking options.
And that
or-
would certainly be
is
something that
that-
we would love to have some private entity solve the public
We're gonna
challenge.
go
Right.
out and look for a company or
Yeah. do one
give them a
under
great deal on
5.
land or something. I mean,
I
How are we
think
gonna
that
bring
would be
somebody?
one of the
Okay.
options, but I think that's the plan as opposed to the implementation.
Is-
Well, that's an action step, though.
The action step is to encourage and facilitate and do what the city can do that will allow compliance with state law. I'm, I can say it differently. but-
No, I agree. I think it would be great. I think, doing what we can to help our city be a little better at compliance is a great goal. I want to be careful that we don't mix government work into private, where the private domain should be. And so I just want to guard against that with our action steps and our considerations, because I do feel that the solution is within the private domain. Maybe removing obstacles might be in the
With zoning.
public domain. That's
That's a
my
good way to
thoughts.
say it.
I'd like to say something, Dr. Hunt.
Go ahead.
Right now, if you took all the RVs off the street, we don't have a place for them to park. So your idea of having parking for them and getting that public person to build something, because what are we going to do to grandma and grandpa? They're going to have to take them over into Henderson, their RVs or their boat, and I think that's an issue. So I think that's the issue that's got to be resolved before you ask them to go somewhere else.
But within our capacity to do that, I mean, short of leasing land to someone for however long to build something, right? And we already know that that's a crazy road to get down for that kind of a thing. We have the capacity to change zoning, maybe, so, or
Yeah.
to make it
Yeah.
more a place for it to be built, and then find private people, just go out. I don't know how you do that.
Mayor Hardy?
Go ahead.
As the council is discussing this action item, since it's not appropriate as a separate strategy, the more we're looking at Goal 7, specifically Strategy 4, support a unified approach to police, fire, courts, and code enforcement, we think this action item might be a better fit there than under infrastructure.
I think that's true, too. We're going to skip that number 6 and go to goal number 6, number 1, secure permanent funding for the community resource liaison position, explore ways to expand its role and services. Mr. City Manager, you have some thoughts on that?
Well, this came from the citizens of the community, and so this could be opportunities to explore resources, grants, and other opportunities to continue to support that position. And so you see several action steps that are related to that.
Current funding ends in 2 years?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the city council approved $400,000 in ARPA funding to support this position for 4 years.
So do we need to do anything or just say that's
I
what
think
we're
it's
doing?
important for us to note the implication. What we're doing here is creating a new permanent position in the city. I don't know that that position exists, right? If we're talking about finding permanent funding, is that person then going to become a city employee? Or will it continue to be this, because right now it's ARPA from the city. And we're talking here about finding sustainable public funding sources. What if we don't? Does then that position come out of the budget as an FTE, a full-time employee?
Currently, that position is with the hospital. The city provided the hospital the $400,000 to support the position. So this doesn't create a new position. It would look for funding opportunities to continue the existing situation.
Okay, look for was the term you used. This says secure it. And if we don't secure it, are we not, or is it a failure of a strategy? Right?
Yeah.
So we got to be, very specific and I think cautious. Maybe we get the funding, maybe we don't. But I want it to be known, we either are saying here that the city will then take it out of the general fund to pay for whatever the shortfall is, or will not. We're only finding outside sources. Which are we doing?
That's up to the council with the strategy. So you could
Okay.
change it to explore outside funding opportunities to support the community resource liaison position.
Did you have something, city attorney?
It was just merely to point out that we wouldn't be committing city funds in the strategic plan. The idea is just to, yeah,
Okay, I just want that, we got to be careful then,
yeah,
because we may or we may not get the full amount required,
yeah.
right? And so if we don't, we are accepting in this meeting right here, right now, that we get what we get, and we send it to the hospital or to the program, and the person will either say, I'll work for that, or I won't, right? Do we have a dollar figure that we're saying we're going to find to make it permanent?
You could even make this a little bit more broad and talk about the service that the community resource liaison provides and really the strategy in achieving that service, either through funding that position or partnering with a nonprofit or having other mechanisms to achieve that goal, which is really to provide this service to the community. So rather than the strategy being securing permanent funding for this position, it could be exploring ways to provide community service to support the community.
I think that's great. I like where you're going with that, and to further expand on that idea, continue to provide the community support that is being done by the community liaison, resource liaison, right? And so that could be from a variety of ways. It could be some from county, some from state, some from nonprofits. And if we get the funding, great, we get to keep that community resource liaison position kind of active in its current iteration, or it may change. So I'd like to put that conversation out to the council.
Go ahead.
Most hospitals do have a social worker in the hospital taking care of people that need to get into a rest home or to get help with medical and stuff like that. So I think what Steve was saying is absolutely great that they should be working too to get those resources. But what I would also like to see, it's been a whole year that she's been over there and she hasn't been to city council. I don't even know what she's done and how many people she's helped. And I think that would be important to have somebody come and speak to us about how many homeless people were taken off the street by her efforts. And how many people did she help over at the hospital by her efforts? And that, I think that would be important for the whole community to hear.
Yeah, and just to respond to that, I have initiated a meeting between the hospital, the community resource liaison, our police, fire, and courts. We are going to meet quarterly now, and we're going to discuss the resources that the position is providing to the city, and we will be reporting that out to the city council.
Love it.
Will you also maybe discuss whether or not the hospital will be able to bring some of the funds to keep that position?
Absolutely, we can ask that question. The city's commitment, because it was ARPA funds, is finite. It was $400,000. That was it. So there was no commitment to a long-term financial commitment on the part of the city.
I know our community resource liaison, and this, conversation in no way reflects the absolute dedication, capability, professionalism, and commitment to the sources, to the services. She's doing amazing work and far above and beyond what we ever could have found in another candidate likely. So I just want to, say that it has in no way a reflection of what's being done there, but just, what we're strategically committing to is all that I'm pointing out here.
So based on that feedback, I'm amending the language to be less definitive intentionally. So exploring opportunities to continue supporting the services provided through the community resources liaison as the strategy, and then explicitly calling out identifying external funding sources, removing the word public. So that could be through private grants, that could be through external public funding. And then also keeping the second bullet, which is, I think, to your point around confirming the hospital's commitment as well, understanding that they should or must be a partner financially as well in this.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
All right, we'll move to number 2 under Goal 6, assess the feasibility of a long-term multimodal transportation system. And anybody else concerned about parking? So it was interesting at the RTC, we've talked about on game day, for instance, they pick you up in a bus and take you down to the Legion Stadium, and then they pick you back in the bus and take you back to where you parked your car so you don't have a parking fee. And I said, man, and it's free? And they said, no, it costs $2. So is there something that we can do locally that improves, for instance, and assesses how successful we are at the parking issues and that feasibility study? I think we're kind of doing that. And I think that needs to be in front of our faces of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Comments from the council?
I think this could use a lot of, I don't know, maybe not a lot of resource or research. I'm not familiar with everything that's available. I know the Silver Rider is an option locally. I believe Lend a Hand also provides rides to, office appointments and so forth for our community members. So when we talk about, this type of multimodal, what really is the need? And when in the assessment phase, I think we need to perhaps utilize our working group, our accessibility working group, to kind of help us understand more of the potential transportation needs, the multimodal transportation. We've talked a pretty fair amount about accessibility, and is there more that working group can help us understand as we talk more about transportation in the larger sense? So just some thoughts there.
Anything else?
When you talk about parking, are you saying in general or during event times?
Yes and yes.
Alrighty then. So I was going to say, maybe you could provide that service you were talking about during Art in the Park. I think we do something like that kind of, don't we, anyhow, already? During large events where it's harder to get people downtown, you could provide that kind of opportunity. In general, I don't think that that's sustainable.
Got enough?
If I can make a comment, we talk about multimodal, so we know there's a lot of folks that are writing a new invention since the last strategic plan was really implemented, and that's the proliferation of every type of electric thing you can possibly put your body on and get around town. Bikes, scooters, three-wheelers, two-wheelers, and everything, and they're on every possible part of pedestrian access as well. And sometimes it's safe and sometimes it's entirely unsafe. And maybe as a part of this, we look at if we need to make any modifications to the instructions. I don't know if we change an ordinance or anything, but maybe some certainly community education about where these electric vehicles belong, where they don't belong, how they're not safe in certain areas. I don't know if we have any stats on accidents and injuries, in town, in county, and state, but it sure seems like the possibility is high.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah, to clarify the two bullets that are currently here, and so based on your feedback, I've added leverage the accessibility working group to identify specific community needs as the first bullet, and then I've also added another one related to introducing expanded parking options throughout the city for special events, in particular for special events. A lot of what we heard through the community engagement was that the current RTC offerings fall short of serving communities. There are areas within the city that are not served and neighborhoods that are not currently served. So those folks don't have access to a lot of those particular services, and that Lend a Hand has a very long wait list. And so they're short of volunteers, and so the need is not currently being met. So the conversation about partnerships with RTC are to continue identifying those practices and to advocating for additional expansion beyond the bus routes and also an expansion of the existing routes. The second bullet was related to being able to park and bus folks who are visiting the city so that not all the congestion remains in the downtown area with the limited available parking. So having an electric trolley, for instance, just as an example, as something that could convey visitors between the sites of note throughout the city. So I know that it says multimodal because I don't believe that there are concrete plans that have been made yet, but specifically alternatives to traditional automobiles, essentially. Other comments, edits?
Do we want to explore any additional information on the safe use of our, sidewalks and walking paths, or just leave it lie and move on?
I do think it's a problem. I get comments all the time on it and concerns.
So we would recommend, if you want to have that as an action item, to put that under Goal 7, Strategy 1, conducting assessments of current investments and facilities, because that's more of a public safety matter.
Perfect.
Yep,
Works for me, yeah.
sounds good.
Including motorized. Yeah.
Motorized vehicles and their impact on public walkways and safety concerns.
And access, yeah.
Yeah.
So did we finish number 2 then? So we can go to number 3. Prioritize accessibility for disabled Americans, ADA-focused investments throughout the city. And I think we have a plan. And do we need to change our investment accessibilities? I think those are one of the things that we have to do, is make sure that we've got the investments available to us. And I think that is a short-term thing, and I think we've already kind of addressed that, Mr. City Manager. Anything specific we want to look at?
No, I think these action items are reflective of the initiatives that we've already begun and will be working on over the next couple of years.
And so strategically, we'll come back and report what we've done in our strategic plan.
Yes.
Anyone else have anything on 3? We'll move to number 4, under goal number 6, support a unified approach to police, fire, courts, and code enforcement. I think that's an ongoing thing, obviously, that will never be completed, but will always be necessary. Anyone have any comments on the success factor and metrics?
Is this where you were recommending to put the parking?
I believe that was 7.
7?
Yeah.
7, okay.
We're on number 7.
No,
Code enforcement.
Oh, sorry, yes. I'm confusing the motorized vehicles and the facilitating opportunities to address RV parking. Yeah, so that would be under Goal 6, Strategy 4.
Excuse me, I would think that some good action items or would be, identify and remove obstacles, similar to what we put for housing. If there are any obstacles that the city can remove for private development of places to park our RVs, right? I think, to me, that seems appropriate. It's in our realm and should be able to, help us, get to where what we can do and keeps us out of what we maybe shouldn't do.
Are you on goal 6, number 2? Which one are you on?
4.
6-4.
The one number, 6-4, talking about the RV parking, which staff suggested we put under number 4 there, the code enforcement. Support a unified approach to police, fire, courts, and code enforcement is where they suggested we put that.
As an action step to remove, or would you put it, where would you put it as an action step?
Yeah, an action step, because, the success factor is more compliance, right?
Yes.
So the action steps is identify and,
Remove barriers. for
remove,
compliance
yeah.
to state.
yeah, that are within our realm, right?
Are you getting that? That's number 4 under goal 6?
Identify and remove obstacles to support the private development of additional RV parking in support of compliance with state parking laws. State parking laws? That's
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll go to number 5, under item number 6, goal 6.
I have something for number 5.
Go ahead.
I just would like to find a better way to promote our police department. The fire department, we love the fire department because they come out and rescue us and save our life. Where with the police department, they give us a ticket, and so they're not looked upon as favorably. But I'd like to see us work more with the community to maybe express some of the things that they do, some of the good deeds they do, and how tough their job is. And so I was talking to Michael Mays about it, and so he had come up with a couple of ideas. But I just like to see us promote our police department in a positive light and maybe give them a little more kudos. And because the I-11, they're having to deal with drug dealers all the time, and that's just my thought there.
Yeah, is that captured in Goal 7, Strategy 6, which is communicate and celebrate the low crime rate and other service excellence?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we're still on number 5.
Yes.
The memorandums of understanding, your MOUs, I think we want to continue to encourage how our people are represented regionally on task force operations and planning groups, and then have some kind of report how our people are being involved in the greater Clark County area or even the state, so that we know what we're doing and how we're participating in groups and enforcement and facilitations.
So would that be an annual report on
That'd
those
be good.
efforts? Yeah. And that could be one of the success factors.
We'll move to goal number 7, number 1, and goal number 7, conduct assessment of current investments, facilities, equipment to meet city's evolving needs. I think that gets back to what we had talked to with before. And then the police and fire are the lead agency or lead agencies in that. Again, we're not putting utilities under there because they're a separate entity, or do we want to add that?
I think it's just for high levels of public safety. I guess that is public safety, but.
Utility capacity is called out at the bottom of the infrastructure section under
Okay.
Goal 5.
All right. Anything else we need to add on that then?
I'd like to propose a discussion of something that has been a concern to the city and the police department for many years. And when we talk about assessment of current investments, specifically focusing on facilities.
Yes.
The current building that houses the police department has been identified as woefully inadequate for the purpose that it is used. And I think it's time to be a little more proactive in the way that we start strategically planning for what's best for housing all of the efforts of our police services. And it's a wide variety of services. And so, I think, financing right now, large capital improvement project, swimming pool. To me, once that's done, find a way, whether to use the current facility, modify it, add on, or build a new one. An adequate police facility should be high on our list. And so I'd like that conversation to be had here about where we want to think strategically about that.
Well, I think that you're spot on, and that obviously is long-term, and so a new police facility would certainly be a part of that strategic plan. And I think that's the right place for it.
For me, I think, as has been noted, a lot here to be very specific about how we want to approach it step by step, consider the funding sources, and really outline a time frame that we want to be serious about having something identified and in the works.
Could we do capital improvement voter approved? We tried that once.
Well, yeah, doing it, I think, in a more do more
educated,
prudent fashion,
for it?
might be
Uh-huh.
a little more successful. But it doesn't have to say that. It could, find funding sources, right? Be, strategic at that level. But, anecdotally, I think every person associated with the police department would say, yeah, that building's not adequate, right? And therefore, all of us who have talked to all of them would probably parrot the same thing. Yeah, look at it. It's pretty obvious. But that doesn't get any action. And so do we want
Bless
to, formally make an assessment? What are the options to bring it up to appropriate standards, and then discover funding for whatever that option is, whether it's modification, increase the footprint, internal, walls being knocked down that unfortunately, or fortunately at the time, were built with damn concrete, which is about as hard to bust up as you can find, or a new facility adjacent to or somewhere else in the community. But I think that's a serious conversation that we should start
I
planning
think
for.
seriously, you can just say, strategic plan is to get a new police facility.
I agree.
And that's,
So put that in as an actual strategy as opposed to an
Right.
action plan?
Whatever the council thinks.
Well, it would fit under Goal 7, Strategy 1, because you're assessing current investments in facilities, and you would just put as an action item, move forward with a new police facility or a police facility that meets the city's needs.
And our strategic plan will require a coming back and saying, okay, at various levels, how do you do that and what are you going to do? But our strategy for 5 years is to get one. The strategy. Okay?
Sounds good.
So
Yeah.
what did you put down under action step for 1?
Assess need, develop plan, and identify resources for capital improvements of the police station to meet the city's needs. So that doesn't tie you to a complete new building. It could be a rehab.
Great,
Like it.
thank you.
Good. Number 2, recruit and retain highly trained public safety staff.
I think develop a citywide recruitment program. I think we should change, instead of being citywide, maybe countywide or statewide, because we don't want to, like, citywide kind of limits us.
Oh, good point. So the recruitment program is for the city without borders of looking where we're going to get them from.
Yeah, to clarify, I believe it's so that fire and police don't have separate recruitment, that it's a combined on behalf of the city for the public service, public safety positions.
Okay.
Who,
But it's-
who suggested that? Did that come from police or fire? Because I don't see that as an option at all.
So we're all thinking, it's great to have two entities being together, but they're not.
Yeah, they're both public safety, but you're looking after two different types of
public,
candidates.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want that to be for each department to develop their own intentional regional recruiting strategies?
Right.
Well, I mean, are we talking about changing what we're currently doing?
So human resources is actually the key here. They're the priority. So it's how human resources is intentionally recruiting, with police and fire assisting and providing that subject matter expertise on what they're looking for.
Yeah. I don't know if there were any other comments put in here, if this just is a carryover from the last strategic plan.
I believe this might be a carryover. So there were a variety of items that were
Yeah.
asked to be carried over
Yeah.
based on your last guidance.
If you'll bear with me 1 second, I can look at the last one under that goal and see if it.
So what we're interested is making sure human resources has the tools to do both and be able to come back to us strategically and say, this is what we're doing to do that.
How
What if-
about develop a police and fire recruitment program?
Right.
That's what I was going to say.
Yep.
Thank you,
Great.
Michael.
Sounds good. Good job. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to get too specific on identifying in our strategic plan how those two departments are going to
Right.
recruit. I think we, let them do their thing.
So we'll move to number 3.
I'm sorry, so I have one more
Okay.
on that same number.
Okay.
If you go across the success factor and metrics, conduct exit surveys through human resources. And, maybe with an organization with high turnover, you'll learn why people are leaving, right? As far as I know, we have only retirement turnover in both police and fire. Very, very low, maybe 3 varies in the low turnover. And so while I love the idea of exit surveys for personnel in every single department, I'm not sure what the value that a success factor, like that, we're going to lead all this, and the success factor is we're conducting exit surveys. I'm not sure that works for us. If we want to, consider something else, but I would think that an action step would be conducting exit surveys. I think The success factor is an adequate number of qualified candidates to make selections of good employees is our success factor, right? That's what we're really looking for, is to have a good pool of candidates so we can make great selections for our employees. So I would, if we're going to keep the exit survey, which I honestly think should be done for every person that's leaving employment, that would, to me, be an action step. But I honestly, because of the low turnover rate, don't know that even that would have an impact on our recruitment and finding and keeping, good employees.
So in terms of the metrics, is what you would like to see perhaps average length of tenure within those departments?
I think if we just say, maintain a low rate of employee turnover in those departments, because I think we can appreciate the fact that those two departments specifically, and there are others, but these, when we're talking public safety, have a lot of time and financial investment in getting those employees up to speed, and it's a substantial impact, both in time and staffing coverage as well as money, if we don't keep our folks, right? And so I think we're okay keeping our folks. And so if we want to talk about tenure, which isn't a bad idea, just maintain the low rate of turnover. And then
Lose to the other side? Do we lose to Henderson or to Vegas?
in those two departments, I can't, Chief Shea says people are wanting to come here rather than go that way. And my personal knowledge of the fire department, I can't tell you when somebody has left. Now, people have left our fire department reserve ranks that we weren't able to hire because they were offered a job in another department that was hiring more people, right? That's our concern, is we lose, at least in that department, good quality folks because the other departments are hiring hand over fist right now in the 20s and 30s and 40s, and where we're hiring one here and there. That's our bigger issue. So I think what they have going on is as good as it can be. I don't know that we need to get in the middle of their business in a strategic plan kind of way. Other than that being a goal to maintain low turnover rates and let the police and fire chief do what works for them, because they are very unique in their candidate pools.
So our metric would be assess turnover rate and evaluate. I think Councilman Walton's point about everybody who leaves deserves an opportunity to have exit survey and find the good, the bad, or the questionable. Those are my thoughts. Anyone else?
Which honestly, I think if there's a place for an exit survey for departing employees anywhere else that covers all employees, not just public safety, in the strategic plan, I'd love to see that moved there. I think that tells a lot that's important to know about an organization.
Yeah, if you can find a place in the above, that'd be great. Can we move on to number 3?
I'm done with my comments there, sir.
Ensure adequate staffing across public safety functions. And that gets back to our conversation. Do we want to say anything else about that? Number 4, define and disseminate standards to ensure a high level of public safety services. Does our resident expert have anything to say on that one?
Fire's got it down good, and I like the language. Let me get to the other updated language. Bear with me 1 second, please. Let's see. And so specifically, so CFAI is fire, and then the second bullet point would be to the police, determination of, and if relevant, I think maybe change that, if feasible. Because accreditation, there's not a lot of options for police, and accreditation comes with its own set of requirements that we may not be able to meet because of staffing or funding or whatever the case might be. And so say then, and if feasible, pursuit of applicable accreditation standards. And then let PD, and at least it's on their radar. It will be on the city manager's radar. They can have that conversation. We can get a quarterly update, what they, have found that might be feasible, or they might pick and choose certain things, or they might be, right online and great, we already know it then. But that's my suggestion for some language modification there.
I like it. Anyone else have? Okay. We will move to number 5 under number 7 goal, identify and embrace latest technology, improve effectiveness and efficiency of public services, public safety services. Comments?
No.
Nope.
We like it. Number 6, communicate and celebrate the low crime rate and other service excellent. Increase the communication public service awards. We have these awards that we get, and it's wonderful that we can all go and invited to the safety awards. I think they're wonderful. Anyone else have anything else they want to say? And number 7, implement annual process for continuing evaluation supporting the city's overall emergency preparedness capabilities. Obviously, we want to continue that. Anyone else have anything else?
No.
And where do we put homelessness other than with our social worker that we are talking about with the hospital and the funding that we're debating?
Based on our conversation, we did not explicitly call it out. It is not explicitly called out, but it is addressed through many of the strategies under public health.
Okay.
It's goal 6.
Okay. Where do we go from here? We finished the strategic implementation plan.
We did. So I will be taking all of these edits and modifying and updating the implementation plan, and then working with staff and the city manager to get this into finalized form.
Anyone have any questions or comments?
I do, please.
Okay.
I'm excited that I get to be a part of the council that gets to, formulate this strategic plan going forward. I so much support strategic thinking and planning, and it's such a great process for our community to go through. I appreciate all the public input we've received over the many months, the people that have both come to the meetings, that have sent in comments, phone calls, emails, etc. It's been great to know that, again, our community is engaged and involved and have input. And I hope that they feel through this that they've been heard and their priorities are appropriate for Boulder City, and that we're, meeting what we all have been elected to do, which is to look out for the best interests of the community and her citizens. I want to especially thank Robin to this point. You do a great job of navigating with this diverse group of people with input, and I'm always impressed by your ability to listen to all this stuff that we throw out there and to just succinctly, boom, this is what I put, and it's right on the mark. So far, I know there's a little bit more to do, but I think the heavy lifting is mostly done, at least in these interactions. And I can't let this meeting go by without saying thank you and give you kudos for your job well done so far, and your professionalism and your ability to really navigate us, and staff through this process too. Thank you. This is going to be important for Boulder City going forward for years to come. So anyway, those are my comments, Mayor.
Thank you. Other comments?
I think Steve said it all for us.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Robin, with the Y, we appreciate you coming and being patient with us and delaying your flight. And if you hustle, you may be able to get on the other one. Any other comments that we need to do? If not, we'll close the
We need to open the public comment first.
meeting except for public comment. And anyone here is not here, so we'll depend on somebody at 702-589-9629. And any written public comments?
All written comments would have already been forwarded to the city council.
Okay. And 702-589-9629. Seeing no public comments, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.